sorry, so cinematic.
All right, so there's two temperatures we need to worry about. The temperature of the flour, or the dough rather, and the temperature of the butter. So the butter block needs to be between 9 and 13 degrees C, and then the temperature of the dough needs to be between 1 and 3. All right, so that's where we need to get our temperature stuff at before we can laminate, okay? So while our dough is mixing here, I'm also gonna mix my butter block, okay? So we don't have to, this can be cold, okay? Oh, thanks. This can be cold. It doesn't have to be room temperature. When we're making our non-laminated dough later this week, we're going to be using room temperature butter because it'll mix into our dough easier. All right, so to make our butter block, I'm going to use a paddle. Taking cold butter, I'm using a little bit of flour, and I'm putting it in here with the butter. Does anybody know why we put flour in with the butter? What is it?
Makes it easier to work with.
It does make it easier to work with, yeah.
Sure.
Also absorbs some of the excess water. There's a lot of water in this butter. Specifically, I know I mentioned like in European butters, it's a higher fat content, lower moisture. I feel like here in Canada, the water's been pretty high. Sometimes I'll notice just when I'm mixing butter, I don't know if you saw this at all when you were making buttercream or something like that. You mix butter, cold butter in the mixer, the water separates out. Which I don't feel like I've noticed that happening with European butter. All right, so we got our cold butter and our flour. And this is not going to be for very long. I have 1 minute, okay? I don't even know if we'll necessarily need the minute. It's more based on the consistency and the look of it. We don't want any lumps to it, right? So you can see here, it's only been in there for about 30 seconds. Basically broke down into little pieces and kind of mixed with the flour. And now it's still a little bit crumbly, but you can feel it when you touch it. It's warming as I touch it too. That it's pretty malleable. All right, we can. I feel like this is about the consistency we want. We don't want it to stick to our fingers too much. So you can see as you touch it, it's not going to leave a lot of excess on there. There's a little bit, but not a whole lot, okay? So that's one way to kind of figure out is how much it sticks to your finger. But this is 30 seconds on speed 1. I'm going to turn it to speed 2 for just a couple seconds. Just to kind of blend it together a little bit more. Probably good, okay? Feel free to take a look at that consistency.
Maybe that butter. Custard. Nice and buttery.
Okay.
It tastes.
It tastes?
She said it tastes. Okay.
How do you taste with your fingers?
I feel different. Okay. She felt like that. Yeah.
Alrighty. So one thing that kind of comes up oftentimes when you're making laminated doughs is how big to roll the dough to start. Okay? It's a little tough question to answer. It's hard to answer that question. But yeah, it's tough to answer that question. A lot of times you go to a workplace, if they'll have a recipe that they follow and they have a specific dimension that they roll to. I believe that a lot of these recipes work well if we take the dough and we roll it to the size of a half sheet pan. But let's just keep this in mind. This is 2 kilos of dough. All right? So we're going to roll the 2 kilos of dough to a half sheet pan. And so in order to laminate the butter properly, we want it to be half that size. When you walked in, who taught Unit 2 for you all?
Lisa.
We've only been with Lisa.
Lisa? Okay.
Yeah.
So did she do the French method where the butter was in the middle and she took the sides in?
Yes.
Does that sound right?
No, we didn't.
No,
We didn't do that. We didn't do that.
We did the one where you can hold it
Yeah.
So it's just like a sandwich?
Yeah, we did a sandwich, and then we did the reverse.
The reverse. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was fun.
That was the best. The reverse was good.
That was so much fun.
All right. So this is a very underdeveloped dough, right? I can't really get it very close to a window pane test. Maybe not too bad. Right? Yeah. But one thing you'll notice too is if this dough really what's that? It warms up quite quickly, right? One thing I'll do, you can also just use your regular thermometer, but I like the digital one for a lot of laminated stuff. It's already at 23 degrees. You know what I mean? Considering we use really cold water and we only mix it for 6 minutes, that's pretty warm. It feels very warm to me. Could be the amount of dough to the mixer. Okay? But
And what do you want the dough to be? What temperature?
before we laminate, it's got to be about between 1 and 3 degrees.
1 to 3.
Yeah. All right.
So when you're on stations making these, would you say we could use the 6 quart, or would you recommend us to use like the 12 quart
There should be 10
or 10 quart?
I think not a lot.
Yeah, there's only like 2.
1, 2. I think there might be another one over there.
I'm already using a sharp because I don't care.
Yeah, these are 8 quarts here.
Oh.
Yeah. So I would probably use 10 quarts or 8 quarts. I think for this to be fine. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and roll this out. It's going to be a little stiff, so we'll see how well I can get with it. So I want to take this dough to be the size of the sheet pan here. Yeah, so I think back to what I was saying earlier. A lot of places I worked, we make the dough like to this stage, wrap it up, put it in the fridge overnight. Maybe let it ferment for 1 hour at room temperature, just to get the activity, the fermentation activity happening. Because once you put it in the fridge, it's going to slow down quite a bit. And depending on the temperature of the dough, if the dough's cold and you put it in the fridge, it's basically going to be dormant. It's not going to be active at all. So this is a good temperature, 23 degrees. I would set it out for 1 hour and then put it in the fridge. Probably roll it out to this size, put it in the fridge overnight. You come in tomorrow and you can see the temperature of the fridge, right? It's probably like 3 or 4 degrees. It's basically ready for lamination right there. Nice and relaxed as well. So it's been sitting on the pan overnight, so it's pretty easy to roll out. It's pretty extensible. I can feel, because this is, like I said, a lean dough. There's no butter in here. It's pretty stiff.
It's fighting you.
It is. It's okay. Everybody have a good holiday?
Yeah. Working.
End of year?
Well, you have to make money somehow.
They have a holiday party.
I had a good Christmas.
I wish I worked more.
Plymouth.
I wish I worked more. I wish I worked more.
I thought I was on vacation last week.
I don't remember.
I didn't go anywhere.
Right.
Stayed at home.
No, actually I don't either. I think I was just wrong. Okay, that's another thing.
These are two different.
I played video.
How about you?
It's good. Yeah. It's good. Like I said, I got little kids, so it's fun because for them. For me, I could care less. But for the kids, it's fun.
How old are you?
5, 7, and 9. Really
5, 7.
pretty young still.
It's a full house.
It is, yeah. It's a small house too. Live in a tiny apartment. Are most of you all from Vancouver? Grew up in Vancouver?
Burnaby.
Burnaby?
I'm from Richmond.
Richmond? I think the thing is like around here, houses are really expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Like where I grew up is in the Midwest, and it's like, I mean, land and houses are cheap.
He's American.
So you can buy like a huge house for not much,
America.
you know. Alrighty, so you can see I'm getting pretty close here. Not too far. Need to just stretch it a little bit more. So we have a small apartment, so it's pretty crowded.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Were you a cook before? Or?
Yeah, I worked as a chef for many years. So I've worked as a chef and a pastry chef. So I worked as mostly, I think if you counted up all the years I've been working in kitchens, it's probably been like over 20 years. And probably about 5 I was working in the pastry kitchen. So mostly I've worked as a chef. But as like I've gotten, even when I was just a chef and I was working in the main kitchen, I was overseeing the pastry department too. So that kind of counts as well, you know.
What do you like better?
Honestly, both are fun. I enjoy both a lot. In general, I just like preparing food, you know. But yeah, I'd say like at least 4 years I was just doing pastries, baking pastries, and then the rest is kind of a mix, you know. Okay, so I'm getting pretty close here. Okay. So the fact
it kind of relaxes as you're like
yeah,
rolling it.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as you kind of pull it off the table, it relaxes a bit. Okay. So the fact that it's nice and that it's rolled out like this, it's going to help it get cold quicker as well. Okay. Because we're going to need to put this into the freezer. All right. Do we have plastic down there? Someone hand me a piece of plastic. It should be right there, I think. All right, so you can see I'm still missing the corners a bit here, which is going to be okay because after it relaxes for 30 minutes or so to get to the right temperature, I should be able to just pull it out a bit. And it should hold its shape on. Okay? So, right, cover it up. We're going to put this in the freezer. Preferably through the top. Usually the fans at the top. So depending on what's going on, a lot of times I'll position it at the top. You got other trays in there and you have it underneath, sometimes it takes longer to get cold. A lot of times too, you'll have a blast freezer. Have you all been in the room with a blast freezer?
No,
We've never
Some of
been.
us have.
Is this the only lab you've been in?
no, we've been on like 3 of them.
It's 17, 13, 14.
How do you remember?
So 211 and 210, 212 and 211. I think they have blast freezers for like you'll use those in the advanced case classes and stuff. And those are pretty good.
We used it for our other units too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we got to use the rapid freeze. Yeah. Yeah, a couple of those pasta pastries. Yeah.
We didn't get good inside.
Alrighty, so now we're gonna make our butter block, right? So we know that our dough is about 31 centimeters by 44. That's the dough. So we want to keep it this length, right? So we wanted 31, but then we wanted half of that. So we want 31 by 22. 31 by 22, okay? So the way that I typically go about that is I'll take a piece, and you can use plastic and other stuff, but parchment works fine for me. Is I take the parchment and I fold it in half. All right, and then we make our measurements on here. So we're gonna need to have some edges here, okay? So we're gonna mark, it's kind of start in the, with a little bit of a lip here. So we have to make the 31 here in the middle, right? Right, so we need this length here. That's going to be this one size, right? I'm just going to make my marks here.
What's the length?
31 centimeters.
31 centimeters.
And then we need that by 22. Okay? So that needs to be the size of our butter block. All right, so I get to this stage, then I fold in the edges. And this works well for this specific batch size, you know what I mean? I've seen a lot of different methods for getting the right measurements. I've seen people use frames, sheet pans, all sorts of different stuff, but for this size, this is good. Alrighty? So we have our butter.
Wait, what? Do what? Do what? What are you talking about? Oh,
Yeah.
that's what he was looking for. Oh, sorry.
Duh.
Oh, sorry.
So weird.
You could have just used mine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh well.
Or hers.
Yeah, over.
Too late.
How are we supposed to know?
Why can't we just cut the parchment paper into quarters?
What do you mean?
Do you have is there a reason you keep it that long? Or couldn't we just cut it?
He's gonna put it on top.
Oh, you're gonna fold it. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's gonna keep it enclosed.
Okay.
Right. So we wanted to kind of, and like keeping it like with those edges there, keeps the butter from like spreading out. Right.
This is for educational purposes. Isabella's been here.
Right.
Isa.
Okay. So I want this kind of in the middle. I don't want it too close to the edge because we're going to use our rolling pin to roll it out. All right.
CPR. This is not.
Oh, no, it's not.
Pretty sure if you go CPR like that, someone will die.
So smart.
Just going to give us this little
Envelope.
packet.
And then we mail it.
Back to like unit 2 when we're all like, I don't know what size.
I literally had a breakdown over this
I know,
butter.
I think we all have.
We
Figuring
cried.
out the right size.
Yeah.
We weren't
I
sure
was
like
just
what
struggling
size
with
we
it.
need to get it to.
Yeah, I think it's, and we'll see here. So the important thing to think about with that question, depending on how much dough you're making, it's going to be different, right? Because we're going to have different thicknesses and things like that. So what we're going to remember mentally and take notes or whatever is we're using 2 kilos of dough. You saw how thick it was for 2 kilos of dough for a half sheet pan. And then we have 500 grams of butter. We're going to be able to remember that so that if we have a formula, we can have some information about, oh, okay, I know that 2 kilos fits into a half sheet pan really well, depending on what your recipe size is.
In like big operations, do they do this for like all the croissants, or they?
Like I said, depending on how much it is, it's going to be in different. There's different machines as well. So if you have like a big croissant production, you can get like these machines that basically kind of like smashes the butter into these frame molds.
Oh, okay, so
So depends. Some places do that. You know, if you're doing like large numbers.
Let's go with France.
You also can do. I mean, I've also seen people just mix it. This is still pretty stiff. But I've also seen people take it from, not that this is a good method, but I have seen people take it straight from the mixer and put it, like spread it onto their dough. Now, actually, you know what actually works really well is you can run it through you can cut it. So if you're not, because you don't always use flour. Like we mix it with flour. Depending on the butter, you don't always do that. Some recipes don't call for that, depending on the moisture content. But I've seen people take pounds of butter and then they cut it into small pieces, right, with like a bench scraper or something like that, and they put it between 2 pieces of parchment and they run it in the sheeter. And have we used, you use a sheeter, right? So you know how much pressure that can put on something. And I've seen people make really fast butter blocks that way too.
that's smart.
So there's a lot of different methods to it. Like I said, this is probably works, I think, for us students in small batches. This works pretty well. You can also buy butter in pre-rolled blocks as well.
Because of the mouse.
You can buy anything.
Because we're
Yeah, you can
selfish.
be amazed. It's funny, like, because I worked with a lot of like French people, right? And they would talk about, that was always their stories at work about coming to America and seeing stuff. And they're like weird things that they don't get in Europe or whatever. And I remember one guy I worked with was telling me how crazy he was because if you work in a restaurant, have you ever seen the scallops? Anybody work in a restaurant that sells scallops?
Yes.
You sell scallops there?
Yeah.
Do they come in a can?
No,
How do they come? Frozen?
in a bag.
No,
Like in a bag.
In a bag frozen?
No, they're not frozen.
They're not frozen? Are they like cryovacs in a bag?
Yeah, they're crab.
Cryovac? Okay. Well, you can also get them a lot of times in a big can. Like a paint, it looks like a paint can. You've seen the paint cans where you, yeah. It's pretty crazy. And so like, I remember like the French guys I worked with were always like, what the heck is that? You know, like they would spend hours back home, like cracking open the shells themselves. It's not the same. I feel like a lot of those scallops are like treated with like something to kind of preserve it a little bit. It's not like it's technically fresh, but it's not. All right, so we're trying, trying, 'We're trying to get this into the corners, okay? And you can probably take this butter a little bit more in the mixer if you want. It's a little bit, I mean, I'm still getting there, it's no problem, but could be a little bit easier because this is going to go in the freezer too.
That's so thick.
It's so even though.
I know.
Yeah, it's so even.
Where was this method when we were trying to do it? because we were
How were you doing it?
well, just
Guessing.
We're guessing.
Yeah, we were
a lot of
guessing.
like
They would
guesswork
call
and
me
like
so
trying
weird.
to
Just
make sure that everything's flat.
We're good at guessing though.
we were just using like like our dough was the same size as like a half sheet pan,
Yeah.
but then our butter block was half of that.
Uh-huh.
And we were just basically like,
Oh, trying
and
to-
then we were measuring it with the dough, like we take the dough out and see
Yeah.
if it fits
Yeah.
between, if not, roll it out more.
We pretty much
It was so
Like it was kind of a
the
guess.
butter. The butter block was so thick.
All right, so this is pretty good, right? If you, depending on what it is, sometimes like you see here, it's got a little bit past, and I'll show you too, maybe when we actually laminate, when I open it up, I'll just take my bench cutter and I'll just trim it and put it right on top. No big deal. All right, so this is pretty good. I think you probably remember the description of how the consistency it needs to be, right? Firm but pliable. And then we need this to be between 9 and 13 degrees, right? So that's looking pretty good. So it's 16 right now, so it's not too far off, right? That's probably going to be in the freezer for another 15, 20 minutes, something like that. And by the time we get there, this should be ready as well. I'm going to put this in the freezer because I know it's not going to be in there for very long. If I was going to have this for much longer than a few minutes, like 10 or 15 minutes, I would probably rather put that in the fridge. But either way, we know our temperatures, right? Okay, so we're going to repeat this process. Let's go down and do the main dish.